Not a week goes by when somebody doesn't share with me why Lund changed their lives.
Today, Lund is a multi-service adoption, treatment, education, family support agency, and parent-child center, offering comprehensive, integrated services to women, children, and families across the state of Vermont. But Lund's complex history traces back to 1890, when it was originally founded as a maternity home. $15,000 was pledged to purchase buildings and furnishings together with 12 acres of land.
It's amazing because most of the places I've worked have not had any kind of history like this, so we're part of the fabric of Vermont.
A fabric that, along with the rest of the state and country, has sometimes been a reflection of the prejudices clients have faced throughout the years. In 1890, the General Assembly of Vermont granted an act of incorporation for the Home for Friendless Women, Lund's first name.
Doesn't that bring tears to your eyes when you hear that? Yes.
It really does.
Friendless women. And you can think, well, they had parents, but to the parents, they were an embarrassment.
The Home for Friendless Women, I mean, that pretty much says it all.
And we know a lot more, than we knew in 1890, obviously. So the very compassionate women in 1890 were trying to come up with a thoughtful name. If we want to make our services as available for people as possible, we have to make it easy for people to access services and not feel stigma and shame.
All who entered the home as inmates must be honest, truthful, kind, obedient, industrious, tidy, and pure. In fact, some of the original residents were found in the jails. Lund's long-standing relationship with the correction system is a theme to this day and has persisted from the very beginning. Mrs. Russell called for me to go to the jail and get a young girl and her babe, and did so, finding them in a sad and filthy state.
When you're talking about women who have been incarcerated, whether today or 120 years ago, we're talking about people who are facing extraordinary challenges in their life, and oftentimes have been forgotten about by the rest of us in the community and have been left on the margins. What Lund does is really break that cycle of poverty, break that cycle of addiction. They bring them into the fold. They make them part of this community, and really it's a great message, particularly those who have gone to jail, that Lund conveys, and that's about reconciliation, that we're all part of this community. We all have to take care of each other. Those are services that were needed 125 years ago, and frankly are needed again today.
It remained the Home for Friendless Women until 1926, when Dr. William Lund made a bequest of $100,000 in memory of his wife Elizabeth, a tireless supporter, and the name was changed the following year to the Elizabeth Lund Home.
It's sort of changing people's perceptions and images, depending on their age and what their situation is. They always have something to say. The question is what it's going to be. Sometimes it's, yeah, we used to peer in the bushes to see what was going on.
I went to Burlington High School, grew up, was born and brought up here and went to Burlington High School, and there was a girl in the class above me, and all of a sudden the word was out that she was pregnant.
Well, you just have to realize how much of a scandal it was to be pregnant and not married. And then, of course, most of the babies, all of the babies were placed for adoption because the mothers couldn't keep them because unmarried mothers in society at that time were unheard of pretty much.
You'd walk into the Lund home and they had this big staircase. I remember that. And then they had like Victorian chairs. You know how uncomfortable those chairs are. And that was the furniture, you know. Think what the girls must have felt like when they came in. They must have felt like they were being sent back in time, really. And it wasn't, you know, of course they used to eat there and sleep there and live there.
I know our archives talk about the rules and the bowl of wedding bands that residents would have to put on before they left the house.
So that people would understand that they were married, you know, and then they'd come back and put the wedding ring back in. So they themselves wanted that protection. They certainly, their parents had primarily put them there so that they could go on with their lives without the knowledge that they had been pregnant.
When they went into labor, there was a delivery room there, and the obstetrical resident would come down and deliver the baby.
The medical staff used to come in so the girls didn't have to go out. It was like Shamesville, you know, to just keep them in the side, you know.
If there were any problems, they could always be transferred to the hospital. And if they were always admitted as whatever their first name was, Lund, and the baby was always baby boy Lund or baby girl Lund.
Then somebody at the hospital said, or some doctor said, it would be much safer to have the girls at the hospital. So we really aren't going to come down anymore.
If you feel sick or cannot sleep, report to the nurse. If near your delivery date, do not decide or ask another girl what she thinks your pain or feeling means. Go down and have the nurse check. The hospital is the place to have your baby, not the dormitory.
And then the babies still came back.
Yeah.
So the babies were still
and
in
the
there.
babies would stay there while the moms would go back to wherever they came from.
They would. And then the adoptive parents would come in to the Lund home, pick up the baby.
How much interaction did the birth mothers have with the babies at the time?
Very little. The idea being that the baby was going to be placed for adoption, and they were more separated at that time.
And then go back home and live a lie, really, saying that they didn't have, you know, and they didn't really have a choice, which was sad, you know. So if a girl decides they want to give up their baby, that's fine, but these girls, some of them perhaps would have made other choices.
I mean, I'm sure for a lot of them it was difficult to give up the baby. I don't doubt that at all. But the insurmountable problems of having a baby, being an unwed mother, and very obvious that your family was not supportive of that since they had sent you here, I think reality was that it wasn't possible.
It was those days. It was so different than it would be now. People are more frank about things like that now than they were in those days.
Sometimes we've changed as society's changed, and sometimes I'm hoping we have helped society to change. And so it's interesting to think about, with the archives, when have we helped to make the changes, and when have we responded to changes?
Through the 1960s, Lund focused predominantly on adoption, closing the decade by moving into a new building on Glen Road, which was built on the land behind the original Elizabeth Lund home. By the 1970s, the adoption picture is changing dramatically. Fewer women are choosing adoption for their babies. In 1977, a family resource center opens, providing therapeutic childcare and family counseling.
So I think as the Lund home involved, they really supported choice of keeping the baby or choice of giving it up, whichever you chose.
Nourishment is a notion that Lund embraces on so many levels and has been a theme in its history. In the literal way, nourishment is important for Lund's residents and clients. Eating a well-balanced meal. It's a part of treatment to learn to take care of yourself physically. In a figurative sense, Lund is also helping its client nourish their lives in a bigger way through education, through having a support system, and through healing. The late 80s proved to be a busy time. Lund's early childhood education program opens, providing high-quality education and care to children aged up to 3 years old, and Lund is designated a parent-child center. Adoption also expands to include open and identified adoptions. Lund also goes through its third name change from the Elizabeth Lund Home to Lund Family Center.
Oh, the place changed completely. I'd say each stage sort of emphasized where they were at that particular time.
As society has been more accepting, we've had women in our residential program choose to parent. Likewise, we've had single adoptive parents choose to adopt. We've had same-sex couples adopt.
Teresa Tomasi, who is executive director of Lund until the 80s and has herself adopted 27 children to date, many through Lund, broke through many of society's adoption barriers, prejudices that included being a single woman, building a large family, and being over age 40.
And what people forget, and Lund didn't, is that these children, you may take a lofty stand, you know, But these children have to live with it, you know?
In the 2000s, Lund opens Independence Place, transitional housing for 7 young moms and their children, and receives a grant to treat women with substance abuse. In 2007, Lund completes its first capital campaign to renovate the old building at Glen Road, increasing capacity from 18 beds to 26.
I was aware, I had friends who had been board members and things like that, of what was happening at Lund, and it was a lot different than the Lund that was still in my head somewhere about these girls who came in the dark of night and left after they had their babies, and that was it. It was a different outlook altogether.
In 2009, Lund earns the Congressional Angel in Adoption Award for outstanding advocacy in adoption and foster care, and federal recognition for residential treatment services. In 2010, Lund absorbed a program called Kids Apart, which specifically helps kids with incarcerated parents.
The bond between mother and child is so strong, and the fact that there's a program that, although there may be bars and walls that separate a mother from their child, Lund is providing really an open door and a helping hand, and really facilitating that contact between mom and child. And I'm not sure you can measure the benefit of that. And without that program, you take away that hope that somebody can provide for themselves and their child, I think we'd see a lot worse outcomes. And it's a tremendously important program. It's a program that a lot of people don't know about, but it's a program that goes to the basic human element to be loved and to love.
In 2011, Lund begins its second capital campaign to move its outlier programs onto Joy Drive. Lund also goes through a rebranding and a 4th name change from Lund Family Center to just Lund.
Lund isn't just about one place. We provide so many services in people's homes. We have staff in the Northeast Kingdom, Springfield, Brattleboro, Bennington. We serve the entire state.
That I wake up every morning feeling very indebted to the Lund home and the people that help me provide my family. And that's not just words, I really mean that.
I'm constantly amazed by the things that Lund does now. They seem, as soon as they see a need, they figure out a way to do it.
The world, I think, has changed to some degree, that you care more about people that you might not know in any facet of your life, that what happens to them is important to everybody.
Lund bridges that gap, and I said that message of reconciliation, of bringing the women back into the fold, making them part of our community, is an incredibly powerful message, not only to the women, to the children, but to the entire community, that we're in this together.
And perhaps Lund's own history and 4 name changes have also been a message of reconciliation. Like stars in a constellation, each name change has pinpointed the desire for growth, lighting the way for new beginnings, and painting a bigger picture of what really is and always has been at the center of Lund: a heart.